I was never meant to know what it feels like to be prey. Not in this manner. Not with such precision, such calculation. The Emperor forged the Imperium so mankind would never again cower beneath the predatory gaze of the Xenos. So we would stand tall, proud masters of the void, our armies the mailed fist of his divine will. And yet, here I am, Orin Vale, guardsman of the Armageddon 17th, alone on the jungle moon of Valar Inks, discovering firsthand what it means to be stalked by the great devourer. The first sign was the silence, not the absence of sound. No, the jungle never falls truly quiet. On Valar Mind, the canopy teemed with life. Insects buzzed in constant clouds, predators stalked the underbrush, and strange avian shapes screeched from the upper branches. Even in the stillness of night, something always moved, always breathed. But the day it began, that chorus shifted. It wasn't silence, it was organization. The random chaos of sound became purposeful, like the difference between the patter of rain and the cadence of footsteps. The constant drip of moisture seemed to fall in rhythm. The insect drone ceased not in panic, but in coordinated waves that rippled outward from some unseen center. The jungle itself betrayed their presence. It moved differently. It breathed differently. It watched differently. Captain Deshawn had warned us during deployment briefings. He spoke of Tyranid vanguard organisms infiltrating worlds weeks, even months, before the Hive fleet arrived in orbit. How they seeded spores into soil and sky, rewriting the genetic code of flora and fauna. How they established psychic nodes to map, categorize, prepare. By the time the fleet truly descended, he said, the world was already half digested. What he failed to mention was the feeling. The gut-deep certainty that you are walking through the stomach of a predator so vast you cannot comprehend its outline. That it has already begun to dissolve you, even before its teeth close around the world. We had been stationed on Valar Mind for 3 weeks. Standard garrison duty, the sort of tedium munitorum clerks classify as low risk. Valar Mind was, or had been, a verdant agri-moon. Its humid jungles cultivated to produce organic compounds vital to the Forge World Helist Prime. It had not seen war in centuries. We were simple line infantry, hive-born conscripts of Armageddon, equipped with lasguns and faith. Not stormtroopers, not grenadiers, just bodies to fill the Emperor's endless wars. Our tasks were routine: patrols along the perimeter, escorting harvest shipments, culling native predators. The most danger we faced were the so-called ghost claws, feral feline scavengers. A few lasbolts were enough to send them scurrying. Complacency took root, as it always does before a slaughter. When the Vox first faltered 5 days ago, Adept Sorvian muttered about solar flares. When the astropath fell silent, warp turbulence was blamed. When 3 of our outposts failed to report in, Deshawn finally ordered a patrol, 10 men. Sergeant Thale at the lead, myself among them. Thale was no genius, but steady. A scarred veteran whose authority came not from brilliance, but from reliability. He was exactly the kind of man the Guard relies upon to keep terrified boys with lasguns from breaking at the first sign of the abyss. We set out at dawn, in a chimera, its tracks grinding over the gravel path through jungle so dense the light filtered sickly green through the canopy. The air inside was suffocating, despite the environmental systems, condensation dripping down steel walls, uniforms clinging wet to our skin. Kiev, our Vox operator, reported only static. A pulsing rhythm beneath the noise that made my teeth ache. None of us commented. We thought it nerves. After an hour, the first outpost loomed. Prefabricated walls intact, yet power arrays dark. Turrets offline. No sentry at the gate. Thale ordered the Chimera to halt. Standard procedure dictated a cautious advance, but even Thale hesitated, unease plain in the tightening of his scar. He finally ordered Dalen to man the heavy bolter while the rest of us disembarked. We formed skirmish line, lasguns ready, boots crunching gravel. The jungle around us seemed to hold its breath. Not even an insect stirred. Renault, youngest among us, checked the door. Unlocked, against orders. He and Marsden entered while we secured perimeter. 30 seconds later, Renault's voice crackled through the squad Vox, tight, strained, afraid. "Sergeant, you need to see this." We followed him inside. Dim emergency strips cast the interior in red gloom. The generator had been torn apart, not sabotaged but shredded, massive claws through steel. And then we saw the guardsmen, or what remained of them. 4 men dissected with surgical precision. Skin, muscle, organs, bone, all separated, laid in order of complexity. their expressions frozen in agony, alive when it began. And yet no blood-stained floor or wall. Every fluid harvested. The air smelled not of rot but of sweetness, cloying, suffocating. Marsden nearly fled. Jesson vomited. Even Thale muttered prayers. I stared, and realized with a horror colder than any battlefield, this was not human work, not rebellion, not pirates, not hunger. This was analysis, cataloging, specimens arranged not for consumption but for study. Then I saw movement. The parts themselves quivered, tendrils of translucent matter linking organs in parody of nervous systems. As if even disassembled, the jungle itself still breathed through them. The vox at Thale's belt burst with static. Dalen's voice, panicked, screaming. Movement in the trees, multiple contacts, Emperor's blood, they're coming from all sides! We barely had time to react. We spilled from the outpost into the light. The chimera was already surrounded. Shadows darted between trees. Too many limbs, too coordinated. Shapes flew through canopy. Massive silhouettes circled at the edge of sight. Delen fired the bolter, explosions tearing apart smaller forms, but for every one that fell, 3 replaced it. We ran. Last fire lanced the air. Carapace blackened, but creatures did not falter. They knew no pain, no fear. Marsden was the first to die. The ground beneath him erupted, claws and teeth dragging him into soil as if he never existed. His scream ended as earth closed over him. We reached the chimera, piled in as Thale fired until his cell burned dry. The hatch slammed, and something enormous slammed against the hull. Drive! Thale roared. The chimera lurched forward, crushing smaller beasts under tread. Claws scraped steel, bodies hurled themselves against us. Kiev screamed into Vox, broadcasting emergency frequencies, nothing but that same pulsing static. Then I heard it, scratching above. A limb like a serrated blade punched through roof plate, inches from Renault's head. Another plunged elsewhere. We fired upward, las bolts filling the compartment with ozone stink until the attacks ceased. But then the driver screamed. A face with too many eyes smashed through the vision block. It dragged him out through shattered glass, blood spraying across cabin walls. The chimera veered, slammed into a tree. Impact hurled us against restraints. Jesson's arm snapped with a sickening crack. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then claws tore at the roof again. We abandoned vehicle. Rear hatch burst open, and we spilled into jungle, forming desperate circle as Thale commanded. 8 of us left. Jesson crippled, Marsden gone, driver gone. The Xenos circled unseen, rustling foliage, flashes of chitin. Our last guns trembled in our hands. Kiev Vox, Thale barked. Still static, Sergeant, Kiev whispered. But there's something in it, like words. Not any language I know. Keep trying. The rest, conserve ammunition. And so we moved. A desperate knot of men in endless green twilight, covering arcs, boots sinking in soil that seemed to writhe beneath us. Every step watched, every breath measured, every heartbeat counted. It was then, moving through that cursed jungle, that I truly understood. We were not soldiers on patrol. We were specimens in a study, and the Hive Mind was already learning. The jungle of Vilar 9 closed around us as we pressed forward. Sergeant Thal's voice, a steady anchor in the rising tide of panic. Keep formation, 30 degrees each. Don't waste fire unless you have a target. Move. 8 men now. 8 against a swarm that spanned the stars. The Emperor alone knew how long our luck would hold. The jungle pressed in on every side, each vine a grasping hand, each shadow a watching eye. Moisture dripped from the canopy in rhythms too deliberate, as if even the rain itself had fallen under alien command. My boots tangled in roots that twitched like serpents, forcing me to hack free with combat blade. Every sound gnawed at the edges of sanity. The enemy did not strike openly. They toyed with us, darting just beyond clear sight, forcing nervous fingers to squeeze triggers. Each las bolt that cracked through foliage expended irreplaceable charge. I realized their strategy with growing dread. Bleed us of ammunition before the main assault. Trooper Hull was the first to break. A quiet man from Armageddon's underhives, he stumbled, clawing at his face. Blood streamed from eyes and nose. "Get it out!" he shrieked. "Emperor, it's inside my head." Before we could reach him, Hull raised his lasgun and pulled the trigger. The back of his skull blossomed crimson across the leaves. His body crumpled, twitching. In the sudden silence, I thought I heard laughter, thin chittering echoing from the tree line. Not human laughter. Something worse. "Keep moving," Thale growled, though his eyes betrayed what his voice denied. Fear. 7 remained. The ground betrayed us next. One moment, firm soil. The next, soft and yielding. Quicksand that was not sand at all, but living tissue disguised as earth. It sucked at our legs, pulling us downward, the jungle itself attempting to digest us alive. Formation shattered in panic. Men screamed, last guns fired blindly, staccato flashes illuminating glimpses of alien forms in the dark. Sergeant Thale's voice roared above chaos. Form up! On me, for the Emperor. I tried to obey, thrashing through sucking ground, clawing for roots that writhed as if alive. I glimpsed Thale, a dark silhouette with his lasgun blazing, voice unbroken even as the earth sought to swallow him. Then came the scream, not of pain, not of fear, but of a mind shattering. Thal's voice, drawn out into an unholy modulation no human throat should form. A scream that carried knowledge of violation, his soul itself consumed by the hive mind. I ran. Emperor, forgive me. I ran. Away from his voice, away from my squad, away from that certainty of dissolution. I crashed through undergrowth, heedless of noise, heedless of direction, driven only by terror. How long I fled, I cannot say. The jungle is timeless. Eventually exhaustion crushed me against the trunk of a massive tree, chest heaving, lungs aflame. Silence surrounded me. Absolute. Even the drip of moisture had ceased. The jungle was waiting. I took stock of myself. Last gun at 20% charge. Knife at my belt. 3 ration packs, half a canteen, a handful of spare cells. My vox whispered static in my ear, pulsing, rhythmic, almost like words. And I still had my mind. Panic ebbed, replaced by cold, calculating instinct. I remembered the briefings. Vanguard organisms, genostealers, lictors, synaptic spores. Their purpose not to kill, but to infiltrate, to learn, to prepare the world for digestion. The sweet stench at the outpost, the synchronized silence of the insects, the rhythmic static, it all fit. The jungle was already half digested, its biosphere rewritten at the molecular level. The hive fleet could not be far. Days, perhaps. Not weeks, which meant my only hope lay northeast, the main compound. Perhaps 15 kilometers, perhaps 2 days' march if I avoided patrols. A faint hope, but hope nonetheless. I prayed to the Emperor, not for deliverance but for discipline, for the clarity to face death with dignity. Then I moved, one ghost among many in a jungle no longer ours. Night fell. I found hollow shelter beneath the roots of a colossal tree, narrow enough to defend with knife if discovered. I hid within, last gun across my lap, knife in hand. Sleep was dangerous, but exhaustion demanded it. So I dozed in brief snatches, 15 minutes at most, eyes snapping open at every scrape of chitin outside. Twice I heard movement, once something snuffling at the entrance. But the Emperor shielded me, or perhaps I was beneath their notice. They passed on. Dawn brought no relief, only a new form of horror. The first body hung between 2 trees, cocooned in strands of glistening webbing. His chest cavity open, organs gone, yet somehow he lived. His eyes followed me, mouth whispering pleas for mercy too faint to hear. I pressed last gun to his temple, one clean shot. The crack echoed like a cannon in the still jungle. I moved quickly, though his eyes lingered in memory, accusing, grateful both. As I advanced, more bodies appeared. Guardsmen, civilians, all dissected, all alive, all arranged along the likely escape paths toward the main compound. It dawned on me then. This was no accident. This was a shepherding. Survivors funneled into corridors of death, their reactions studied, catalogued. The hive mind learning not only our bodies, but our psychology. I deviated from the path, forcing my way into denser jungle. Thorns tore uniform and flesh. Insects swarmed, immune to the spores thickening the air. Each breath tasted sweet, cloying, corrupt. But I pressed on. Late afternoon I heard it. A human voice. Help me, please. Weak, pained, undeniably human. It came from a clearing ahead. Every instinct screamed trap, and yet duty compelled me. If even one of my brothers still lived, I could not abandon him. I crept through undergrowth, peering into the clearing. Corporal Jessen lay at its center. His arm, once broken, now fused with pale alien tissue, tendrils anchoring him to soil. His chest rose and fell with labored breath. His lips repeated endlessly, "Help me! Help me!" His eyes did not see. Around the clearing, concealed in shadows, I counted 6 Tyranid forms. Perfectly still. Waiting. Bait. I should have retreated, should have left him. But fascination rooted me. Tendrils pulsed from Jessen into Earth, transmitting not only his life signs, but his fear, his desperation. They were learning how we hope, how we plead. I raised my lasgun. "Emperor guide you," I whispered. One shot. His words ceased forever. The jungle erupted. The Tyranids surged toward the body with terrifying speed. I did not watch. I ran, crashing through foliage, zigzagging, doubling back, plunging through streams to mask scent. They pursued with fury now, discipline abandoned. I dove into a hollow log, dragging foliage over myself, lying still as cramps tore muscles and insects crawled across flesh. Hours passed. Darkness fell. The swarm moved on, believing me fled. But I remained, paralyzed with terror, until dawn returned. When I emerged, the jungle had changed. Familiar trees replaced with pale, fleshy growths. Soil beneath boots yielding like living flesh. Spores visible in air, drifting in patterns that shifted as if aware of me. The very world transforming before my eyes. And then, cresting a ridge, I saw it. Capillary towers, vast organic structures rising hundreds of meters, pulsing like hearts, linked by membranous tissue across the jungle canopy. The Hive fleet had arrived. Vale was already lost. And yet I kept moving toward the compound. Because what else remained but to bear witness? The jungle thinned as I pressed forward, the air thick with spores, so dense they shimmered in shafts of sunlight. My every breath felt stolen from the great devourer. Each inhalation alone I would someday repay with flesh. The transformation of Vale was no longer subtle. The diversity of the jungle had collapsed into uniform alien growth. Fungal blooms pulsed with a heartbeat not their own. Leaves sagged beneath membranes of pale flesh. The ground quivered with each step, as though resenting my intrusion into a body that was no longer a moon, but an organ. And then, cresting a ridge, I saw the truth laid bare, the main compound. Or rather, what remained of it. The perimeter walls had been torn down as though by titanic claws. Prefabricated barracks crumpled inward, roofs sagging beneath biomass that crawled across their steel bones. Landing pads cracked open, their ferrocrete drowned beneath living tissue that flexed in rhythm with the capillary towers. But worse than the ruins themselves was what squatted in their heart. A mass of pulsating flesh, swollen into the shape of a colossal brain exposed to daylight. Blue lightning crackled across its surface, arcing through membranous lobes. Faces flickered within, some half-dissolved, some frozen in eternal agony. Faces I recognized. Men from my regiment, their very essence fused into this obscene construct. A synaptic node. I knew the term from briefings, but no words could prepare me for the sight. It was not merely a structure. It was a mouth without teeth, a brain without skull, an anchor for the will of the hive mind. Around it, hundreds of Tyranid organisms swarmed. Tiny feeder beasts dragging nutrient sacks, towering warriors stalking the ruins, winged shadows swooping between shattered walls. The compound was no fortress. It was a hive laboratory. And I, Orin Vale, was alone at its edge. I watched from concealment among the ruins of a half-collapsed silo. My heart hammered as I studied the flow of the swarm. They were not random. Every movement was coordinated, every patrol an extension of one greater will. And yet, I noticed something else. Their perimeter faced outward, designed not to repel intruders, but to capture survivors. Their attention fixed on prey escaping outward, not inward. That flaw ignited the spark of a plan. I could strike the node, not destroy it. The thing was massive, a tumor the size of a hadblock, but perhaps cripple it. Even momentary disruption could unravel their perfect coordination. If I was to die, better in defiance than digestion. I took stock of my pitiful arsenal. One lasgun, nearly dry. One combat knife. 2 frag grenades, scavenged from a fallen comrade. Hardly enough to wound such a monstrosity. But then, watching, I saw a possibility. Feeder creatures approached the node in regular intervals, dragging pulsating sacks filled with glowing fluid. They pressed these into the node's surface, which absorbed them greedily. Nutrients, genetic cargo, energy reservoirs. Whatever their function, they were vulnerabilities. If my grenades detonated within those sacks at the moment of absorption, the reaction might cascade through the structure. It was not victory. It was not survival. But it would be defiance. Night fell. I moved like a shadow through the ruins, each step deliberate, every breath measured. The altered ground muffled sound, absorbing even the crunch of boots. Twice, I froze as patrols passed within meters, their sensory spines twitching in the air. Somehow, the Emperor concealed me. It took 3 hours to cover 500 meters. By the time I lay crouched behind a fallen wall mere paces from the node, sweat had soaked my fatigues. My muscles screamed with exhaustion, and my heart pounded so hard I feared it would betray me. The node loomed above, its surface rippling, blue arcs illuminating faces trapped in biomass. I forced myself not to look, not to recognize, not to think. They were gone. The feeder creatures arrived, 3 of them, and with them not one nutrient sac, but 3, glowing brighter than any I had seen before. Their light bathed the ruins in ghostly blue. The surrounding swarm hissed in excitement, chittering like an audience awaiting spectacle. This was the moment. I pulled the pins from my grenades, gripping both of his levers. My breath slowed. My body tensed. "For the Emperor," I whispered, voice raw. Then I ran. 20 meters stretched like eternity. Feeder creatures turned, shrieking in alien alarm. Warriors pivoted, claws raising. My boots pounded flesh soil. My lungs burned. My vision tunneled. I reached the node, slammed both grenades into the nearest sack. Released. The levers snapped free. Beep, beep, beep. I turned, knife in hand as the first warrior lunged. Its claws slashed where my head had been an instant before. I ducked beneath, drove blade into joint. Ichor sprayed, sizzling where it touched skin. Another circled. Anticipating my feint, its tail lashed across my chest, sending me sprawling. My ribs cracked like dry twigs. Blood filled my mouth. But the grenades were ticking. The warrior loomed above, eyeless head tilting in mockery of curiosity. Behind it, more forms converged, the psychic alarm shrieking across the swarm. I spat blood. "For the Emperor." The grenades detonated. Light consumed the world. Sound shattered eardrums. I was hurled through air, body torn, debris raining. A shard of chitin pierced my side, pinning me to ground. Pain roared through nerves, white-hot, unrelenting. Through haze, I saw the node convulse. Nutrient sacs erupted, their fluids igniting a chain reaction. Lobes blackened, ruptured, spewing noxious ichor. Faces dissolved in fountains of bile. The swarm staggered. Lesser beasts collapsed outright, connection severed. Warriors flailed in confusion, striking each other in blind frenzy. Their perfect coordination shattered into chaos. For one glorious moment, the great devourer faltered. And I laughed. A bubbling, bloody sound, defiance through agony. One guardsman, one soul, had struck the Hive Mind itself. But the victory was fleeting. From the smoke, larger forms emerged, synapse creatures, independent links to the Hive Mind. Already their presence stitched order back into chaos. The swarm reeled, then steadied. The moment of triumph slipped away. I tried to move, but the shard of chitin through my spine left paralyzed from the chest down. My body was broken, my weapon spent, my fate sealed. Then a shadow fell across me. It was colossal, taller than any carnifex I had glimpsed in nightmares. Its limbs fused blade and claw, its head crowned with alien spines. Compound eyes glowed with cold intelligence, a Tyranid prime. It regarded me for a long moment, tilting its head as though in study. Then, to my horror, it stooped, not to kill, but to lift me. Gently, almost reverently, as a collector cradles a specimen. I tried to resist, to raise knife, but my arms failed me. The prime carried me through ranks of chittering organisms, who parted before their superior. They bore me to another structure, smaller but glowing with the same blue luminescence as the node. Only as I was laid upon its fleshy surface did I understand. An examination chamber. Tendrils rose, coiling around limbs, piercing skin, rooting me in place. Pain flared, then dulled. A spike drove into the base of my skull. My body froze, paralyzed yet conscious. And then the presence came. The Hive Mind. Not hunger, not hatred. Something worse. Curiosity. It rifled through me, not just body but mind. Memories unspooled, my childhood in Armageddon's hab blocks, the smell of promethium smoke, the taste of recycled air. The camaraderie of my squad, the steady voice of Thale, the laughter of Marsden before he was swallowed by the earth. It took them all. Not as trophies, but as knowledge, as patterns to be refined. Every thought, every fear, every hope cataloged, repurposed, absorbed. I tried to fight, to hide, to resist, but it was like holding back a tidal wave with bare hands. My soul itself was being dissected, and in that violation, I glimpsed the Hive Mind scale, worlds devoured, species extinguished, a hunger that spanned millennia, not mindless, but endlessly adaptive, endlessly curious. Every victory we claimed, every tactic we devised, every shred of resistance only refined its methods. The Tyranids did not hate us, did not fear us. They studied us, and they were learning. The tendrils dug deeper into my skull. Cold spread through my brain like frost across glass, numbing pain, severing me from my own body. My lungs still rose and fell, my heart still beat, but none of it belonged to me anymore. I was a specimen, pinned beneath the gaze of a predator that was not content to kill. It had to know. Images spilled into my mind, forced through channels I could not close. My childhood in the Hive City, my regiment's oath of service, every face I had ever known. They were stripped bare, dissected, catalogued, and filed away like organs laid on a slab. The Prime loomed above, its head tilting as if savoring the flavor of my thoughts. Behind it, smaller forms clustered, creatures specialized not for war but for vivisection. Their limbs ended in blades and syringes of bone. One drew a line across my abdomen with surgical delicacy. Flesh parted without pain. The neural link had stolen even that. It was not mercy. It was efficiency. I wanted to scream, not in agony, but in despair, in violation. Instead, my mouth hung slack, breath rasping uselessly. Then the world shook. The walls of the chamber trembled, quivering with a rhythm not born of Tyranid flesh. A sound penetrated the organic structure, alien in its familiarity. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions. Heavy munitions tearing through biomass. And then came the sound I had thought never to hear again, the thunder of bolter fire. The chamber shook harder, chunks of living matter sloughing from the ceiling. The Prime's compound eyes snapped upward, mandibles flaring. The smaller dissecting organisms scattered, racing toward exits. For the first time, the tendrils restraining me loosened. The Emperor had not abandoned us. The angels of death had come. The Prime lingered, gaze flicking back to me. For an instant, I swore I felt disappointment, as though its experiment had been cut short. Then it too withdrew, striding from the chamber with unnatural speed. I lay in ruin, half dissected, paralyzed, staring at the ceiling as battle raged outside. The sound was apocalyptic, bolter fire cracking, chainswords roaring, alien screeches echoing. Through gaps in the organic wall, I glimpsed them. Shadows in ceramite armor, black as midnight, their movements precise, economical, inexorable. Raven Guard, not saviors, but executioners. Their charge was not to rescue, but to deny, to scour the moon so nothing of use remained for the great devourer. Yet in their passing, I still breathed. The chamber split open, torn by explosions. Fire and smoke bled into the air, clearing the haze of spores. For the first time in days, I smelled promethium, sacred and terrible, burning alien growth to ash. And then I saw him. A figure stepped through the breach, towering, draped in blackened ceramite. His helm was wrought in the likeness of a skull, hollow eyes glowing red. In his hand he carried a Crozius arcanum, wreathed in crackling energy. A chaplain. He led a squad of assault marines, their jump packs roaring as they surged into the fray. They struck the Tyranids like a storm unleashed. Each bolt round detonated bodies into sprays of ichor. Chainswords reaped limbs and carapace alike. Their movements were not human. They were ritual incarnate, warriors of 10 millennia of tradition. And then the Prime met them. The Tyranid leader roared, its psychic shriek rattling my bones, and hurled itself at the chaplain. Claws clashed with Crozius, sparks of alien energy colliding with the Emperor's wrath. The chaplain staggered under the blow, armor denting, but held firm. His counterstrike shattered a limb, arcs of lightning tearing across the Prime's thorax. The battle was titanic. Each impact shook the ground. Each strike echoed through my ruined body. The swarm around them faltered, direction lost without the Prime's clear command. And I, pinned against a collapsing wall, watched gods and monsters clash while I bled into alien soil. The fight dragged on. The chaplain endured wounds that would have killed 10 men, his armor torn, blood-streaking ceramite. The Prime, though wounded, struck with undiminished ferocity, its hunger not for biomass, but for victory, for reclamation of its experiment, me. Then came the moment. The chaplain feinted left, then swung his Crozius in a brutal arc that cracked into the Prime's abdomen, where thorax met spine. The impact rang like a thunderclap. The Prime shrieked, a psychic howl that shattered the last of my restraint, forcing blood from my nose and ears. It reeled, and the chaplain pressed. Blow after blow, each strike a hymn of annihilation. Finally, the Crozius pierced deep, arcs of lightning erupting through the beast's body. The Prime convulsed, limbs thrashing, mandibles clacking one final time. Then it collapsed, its massive bulk shuddering in death. The swarm dissolved into chaos. Lesser organisms turned feral, striking one another. Warriors stumbled, their synaptic leash severed. The compound became slaughter. I lost consciousness. When next I opened my eyes, the light had changed. Hours passed, perhaps. My vision blurred, but I saw them. Raven Guard apothecaries moving among the ruins, scanning fallen bodies, administering final rites to the dead. One loomed above me, his armor white accented with black. His narthecium hummed as it probed my body. "This one lives," he reported, vox grill distorting his voice. "Extensive trauma, signs of Tyranid infection. Neural corruption minimal, but contamination probable." The chaplain stepped into view, helm still bearing the visage of death. He studied me in silence. "You fought well, guardsman," he said at last. His voice was a grave bell, deep and resonant. "Few mortals endure the shadow of the Hive Mind and remain sane enough to speak." I tried to answer, coughed blood instead. "My regiment?" I croaked. The chaplain's silence was answer enough. Then, "They fought with honor. Their sacrifice bought time for civilian evacuation. Their names will not be forgotten." The shame burned deeper than wounds. I had run. I had survived. And for what? "The invasion," I rasped. "Can it be stopped?" The chaplain shook his head. "This was but a tendril of Hive Fleet Kraken. We have cut its synapse here, delayed its advance, but the war continues elsewhere, always elsewhere." I closed my eyes. "Then grant me a clean death. Let me join my regiment." For a long moment, silence. Then I heard the hiss of a helmet seal breaking. I forced my eyes open. The chaplain had removed his helm. His face was pale, scarred, his eyes black pools that had seen centuries of war. "Your duty is not yet complete, guardsman," he said. "You have walked where few mortals dare. You have seen how the enemy learns. This knowledge must be preserved." The apothecary hesitated. "Brother chaplain, he is infected. Protocol demands termination." "There are exceptions to every protocol," the chaplain replied, his gaze never leaving mine. "Prepare a stasis field. He will live, for now." And before I could protest, before I could claim peace in death, the narthecium pierced my flesh once more, flooding me with chemical dark. Darkness took me. When I awoke, it was not the jungle that surrounded me, nor the pulsating walls of a Tyranid chamber. It was steel, the steel of an Imperial Medicae bay, humming with the engines of a strike cruiser. Through the viewport, I saw Rhine below, its surface already burning, precision strikes igniting bioacid cascades that would scour the moon clean. The apothecary stood over me, voice clinical. "Your spine is severed. You will never walk again. The spores have seeded within your system. You will be taken to quarantine, studied until the day you die." And the chaplain's voice followed, echoing like a verdict. "Rest now, Guardsman Orin Vale. Your fight is over. Your service continues." I awoke to the hum of engines. Not the thrum of a chimera's tracks or the roar of lasguns, but the deep, steady heartbeat of a warship. Steel walls surrounded me, dimly lit by lumen strips. The air smelled of disinfectant and incense, harsh and sterile, so unlike the jungle that had swallowed my regiment. For a brief, blessed moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare, that I would sit up, stretch aching limbs, and hear Thale barking orders for morning drills. That Marsden would curse the ration packs, Renault would boast about some imagined victory, and we would laugh, as men laugh when they believe death is still far away. But then, I tried to move. Pain lanced through me like lightning. My body refused to obey. From the chest down, I felt nothing. No ache, no itch, no warmth. A void where half my body had once been. The Medicae servitors attending me did not flinch at my sudden gasp. Their faces were blank, augmetic eyes unblinking. One checked the readouts of my restraints, another adjusted a drip feeding into my arm. Cold fluid seeped into my veins, dulling sensation, steadying pulse. I was alive, barely, and I hated it. The door hissed open. A figure entered, black ceramite armor gleaming even under dim lights. The Raven Guard apothecary. His helm's red lenses fixed on me, impassive. "Spine severed," he said without preamble. His voice carried the detached certainty of one who has seen too much flesh broken to bother with gentleness. "Damage irreversible. You will never walk again." I stared at him. The words meant less than the silence that followed them. "The spores you inhaled have taken root," he continued. "Your cells show signs of alteration, subtle but progressive. You are contaminated." I closed my eyes. A part of me had known this since the jungle. The sweetness in the air, the way my lungs had burned, the patterns of spores swirling as if aware of me. The great devourer was inside me now. "You will be transferred to quarantine," the apothecary said. "Your blood, tissue, and thought patterns will be studied by the Ordo Xenos, until the day you die." The words struck harder than any Tyranid claw. I opened my mouth to beg for death, but another voice cut across the chamber. deep, resonant, heavy with finality. Your service continues. The chaplain. He entered as if the ship itself parted for him, his skull helm gleaming, his Crozius silent now, but no less terrible. I met his gaze, or rather, the hollow sockets of the helm that masked it. You have seen what few mortals ever see and remain sane, he said. You have walked the paths of the Hive Mind, felt its hunger, glimpsed its curiosity. That knowledge is a weapon more valuable than any lasgun. You will endure, Guardsman, not as soldier, but as witness. I wanted to spit in his face, to scream that I had endured enough, that my soul had already been dissected, my body broken, my brothers slaughtered, that I wanted peace, but his gaze held me fast. And deep inside, I knew he was right. The great devourer had studied me. Now the Imperium would study me in turn. I would be a specimen until my last breath. Days passed, though time aboard a strike cruiser meant little. I was confined to the Medicaid deck, surrounded by servitors that logged every breath, every twitch of muscle, every dream. Yes, dreams. That was the worst. At night, when the ship's systems dimmed to half-light, when the chanting of the Raven Guard chaplains echoed faintly through steel corridors, I dreamed of the jungle's silence, of tendrils caressing my thoughts, of faces half-submerged in synaptic flesh. Sometimes I awoke screaming, convinced the Hive Mind was still inside me, whispering, watching. Sometimes I awoke laughing, though I remembered nothing of humor. The apothecary logged it all. His narthecium hissed, withdrawing samples of blood, tissue, marrow. His voice recorded every word I muttered in sleep. I had escaped the Tyranids only to become a specimen of my own kind, and I did not resent them. Not truly. Because I understood. The great devourer had not hunted me for food. Not merely to consume, it had hunted me to know me, to catalog what it means to be Orin Vale, guardsman of the Armageddon 17th. And now my species would do the same. Through the viewport of my chamber, I watched Valor Eing die. The Raven Guard did not linger. Their work was precise, merciless. Virus bombs in the atmosphere, Melta charges at tectonic faults, bioacid cascades that consumed jungle, outpost, and hive node alike. The moon burned. I should have felt triumph, that the Xenos would find nothing left to harvest. But all I felt was hollowness, for I knew what the Hive Mind had taken could never be purged by fire. It had tasted us, and it was learning. The chaplain visited once more before we departed the system. He stood by my bed, helm removed this time. His face was pale, scarred, eyes like black stone. "Do you curse me, guardsman?" he asked quietly. "For denying you a warrior's death?" I swallowed. My throat was raw from disuse. "I curse the Emperor's silence." His lips twitched, not quite a smile. "The Emperor is never silent. Even in your suffering, he speaks. You lived because you must live. You endure because you must endure. Your torment is your service." I looked away. "I am no longer a soldier." "No," he agreed, "you are a witness, and sometimes that is more valuable." Then he left me alone with my thoughts. Nights aboard the Shadow of Deliverance were worse than any day in the jungle, for in the jungle, terror was tangible, claws, teeth, shadows in the canopy. But here, terror was memory, and memory does not die. I remembered Thales' final scream, a man's soul unraveling. I remembered Marsden swallowed by the earth, his cry cut short. I remembered Jessen's broken body used as bait. I remembered the Hive Mind's presence in my thoughts, its endless curiosity. Even now in stillness, I could feel it at the edges of my mind. Not speaking, not commanding, simply watching, patient, endless. That is what it means to be hunted by the Tyranids. Not merely to be consumed, but to be known. To be understood so perfectly that nothing of you remains unique. I was Orin Vale, guardsman of the Armageddon 17th. And I was already theirs, even as I sailed aboard the Imperium's proudest vessel. The hunt had not ended. It never would. Sleep no longer belonged to me. On the jungle moon, sleep had been stolen by fear. Now, aboard the Shadow of Deliverance, it was stolen by something else, something colder, more patient. I did not dream as men dream. I dreamed as prey dreams when the predator has already pierced its mind. The first visions came as fragments, a forest of bone trees stretching endless across a black void. Each trunk throbbed like arteries, their branches pulsing with ichor. Between them, shadows moved, not separate but coordinated, an orchestra of hunger. I walked there, though I had no body. Every step echoed not on soil but inside my skull. And all the while, I knew eyes followed me. Eyes without lids, compound and multifaceted, watching not my path but my thoughts. Then came the laughter. Thin, high, insectile. Not mocking, but analytical. The way a surgeon might chuckle when discovering a new organ to dissect. I awoke screaming, sweat soaking my sheets, Medicae servitors hissing as they sedated me back into stillness. The Raven Guard apothecary recorded everything. His monotone reports cataloged not my terror, but its pattern. Subject awoke at 0300. Violent agitation, recounted auditory hallucination, neural readouts spike at 68%, specimen sedated. Specimen, that was all I was now. The second dream was worse. I stood in the ruined outpost again, surrounded by dissected bodies of my comrades. But they were not still. They moved, organs quivering, limbs twitching, mouths forming words without lungs. Vale, they whispered, in voices like rustling leaves. Vale, why did you leave us? I tried to run, but the floor was not ferrocrete. It was flesh. It pulsed beneath my boots, tendrils rising to entangle my legs. The bodies reached for me, not in hatred, but in desperate embrace. Skinless fingers stroked my face. Bloodless lips kissed my ears, whispering my own memories back to me. And when I looked down, I saw I was dissected too. My chest cavity open, heart beating in another's hands, yet still I walked, still I lived, because the hive mind wished to see how long I could endure. I awoke to the apothecary leaning over me, narthecium needle piercing my vein. Another episode, he said without emotion. You spoke names. Thale, Marsden, Jessen, your squad. They were my brothers, I croaked. They are data, he replied. Their sacrifice provides context for your reactions. I turned my head away. Better to face the memory of Tyranids than the reality of my own kind treating me as less than human. The spores inside me changed things, slowly, subtly, in ways even the apothecary's machines could not fully measure. Colors dulled, save for red and black, which seemed sharper, hungrier. Food lost taste, except for the ration fluid laced with nutrient enhancers. Its sweetness reminded me of the jungle's stench, of overripe fruit and alien flowers blooming from corpses. Worse were the sounds. The constant hum of the strike cruiser's engines developed a rhythm, a pulse, a heartbeat not of the ship, but of something vast moving through void. I began to hear it in the Medicae servitor's whirring limbs, in the drip of fluid into my veins, in the steady rasp of my own breath. A cadence too deliberate to be chance. The hive mind was still with me, or perhaps it was inside me. I confessed this once to the chaplain when he visited. They are watching me, I said, my voice hoarse. Not just you, not just the Inquisition, the Tyranids. Even now, even light years away, I feel them. In the static of the vox, in the pulse of the engines, in the silence between heartbeats. The chaplain's face remained unreadable, scarred like marble. Of course they are, he said. The great devourer is patient. It can afford to be. What it does not claim in flesh, it claims in memory. You will carry that mark until death, and perhaps beyond. I swallowed. Then I am already lost. No, he said, you're a weapon. Knowledge is a weapon. Endure, guardsman. Even your torment serves the Emperor. His words were iron, but I could not tell if they were mercy or cruelty. The worst dream came weeks later. It began in the jungle again. Always the jungle. The dripping canopy, the buzzing insects, the silence that was not silence. But this time, I was not alone. Sergeant Thale stood before me, whole, unbroken, his lasgun slung across his back. Vale, he said, voice steady. You left us. Tears burned my eyes. I tried, Sergeant. Emperor witnessed me. I tried. He shook his head. No, you ran. And now you live while we're digested. Tell me, Vale, was our sacrifice worth it? Or are you just another sample on a table? I fell to my knees. I don't know. And then Thal's flesh split open, peeling like a fruit, revealing tendrils that pulsed with light. His eyes became compound, faceted, reflecting my broken body 1,000-fold. His voice twisted into a chittering shriek. We are learning, Vale. Always learning. I woke biting my own tongue, blood flooding my mouth. The servitors restrained me until the convulsions passed. The apothecary noted calmly. Subject demonstrates increasing conflation of xenos and human memory. Contamination confirmed. I realized then the truth. The Tyranids had not merely studied me. They had planted something within me, not just spores, but impressions, echoes of their hive mind, a seed of their curiosity. And the Imperium, in its zeal to learn, would nurture that seed. They would record my dreams, analyze my visions, and in doing so, feed the same hunger they sought to defeat. What the Tyranids began, mankind would complete. I was not a soldier, not a witness, not even a prisoner. I was a bridge, between predator and prey, between hunger and memory, between extinction and adaptation. And the bridge cannot choose who crosses it. The chaplain came one last time before we reached the quarantine facility. He stood over my bed, helm donned again, a skull staring down at a corpse not yet dead. "Do you hate me, guardsman?" he asked. I wanted to say yes, to pour all my rage into a single curse. But I found no strength for hatred. "I don't know," I whispered. "Good," he said. "Hatred is too simple. Endure the complexity. Carry it. That is your duty now." Then he left, his black armor vanishing into the steel corridors, leaving me with the hum of engines that was no engine at all. The dreams returned that night, more vivid than ever. And in them, I no longer fled the jungle. I walked beside it. The journey to the quarantine facility was silent. No hymns of triumph, no banners of victory, only the steady hum of the strike cruiser as it sailed through void, carrying me to a fate worse than the jungle. I glimpsed little of the shadow of deliverance beyond the Medicae deck. When they moved me, it was under guard, Raven Guard escorting the servitors that bore my broken frame. They said nothing. They were silent as statues, their black armor gleaming with the faint reflection of lumen strips. To them, I was not a man. I was cargo. When at last the cruiser docked, I saw the facility, a fortress drifting in orbit around a barren moon, its silhouette a jagged crown of steel and adamantium. No windows pierced its walls, no banners flew. It was a place built not for defense, but containment. The Raven Guard delivered me into its hands, and then they were gone, vanishing into void like shadows. The chaplain did not come to bid farewell. Perhaps he had spoken all he would ever speak to me. Perhaps, to him, I was already part of the dead. The Inquisition welcomed me not with words, but with numbers. They catalogued me as Subject 17IX Vale. Guardsman Orin Vale ceased to exist. In my place, a specimen took form. The first weeks blurred together in a haze of procedures. Needles pierced flesh. Augurs mapped neural pathways. Medicae priests murmured litanies as they bled me into vials. I endured dissection without death. Not with scalpels, but with machines that sliced me in ways I could not see. Scanners peeled layers from my flesh, reading the secrets of spores nested deep within marrow. Electrodes bit into my skull, pulling patterns from dreams I could no longer claim as mine. They asked questions, always the same questions, repeated until their meaning eroded. What did you feel in the chamber? What did you hear in the static? What did the Hive Mind show you? When my voice faltered, they used stimulants. When I screamed, they recorded pitch and duration. When I begged, they logged cadence and tone. The Tyranids had studied me to learn how to kill. The Imperium studied me to learn how not to die. In the end, both tore me apart. Quarantine was a tomb. My cell was a cube of steel and lumen light, 4 paces by 4, with a viewport I could not reach from my chair. Servitors tended to me, faceless and tireless. They fed me recycled nutrients, collected waste, and logged every sigh, every twitch, every nightmare. I was allowed no visitors save the interrogators of Ordo Xenos. Their robes whispered as they entered, masks concealing features, quills scratching parchment as they wrote down every word I spoke. One of them, Inquisitor Hestian they called him, stood out, tall, gaunt, his augmetic eye clicking as it focused. He never raised his voice, never struck me, never threatened. His cruelty was subtler. "Tell me, guardsman," he would murmur, though I was no longer guardsman. "When the Hive Mind touched you, did it tempt you?" "No," I rasped always. "Think carefully. Did it not promise survival? Power? Unity?" "It was hunger," I said. "Ah," he replied as though amused. "But hunger is the purest promise of all." He left me with those words, and I hated him more than I had ever hated the Tyranids. For at least the Xenos had never lied about what they were. The spores changed me. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, but the Inquisitors noticed everything. First, my eyes. I began to see in the dark. Subtle at first, shapes clearer in shadow, lumen strips brighter than before. They tested this, plunging my cell into pitch black. I described every detail of their movements. They said nothing, only wrote faster. Next came my dreams, no longer fragmented but coherent. I dreamed of the fleet, drifting between stars, tendrils reaching, worlds falling. I described them under duress, and the scribes nodded, muttering about precognition, about the Emperor's providence. But I knew the truth. They were not visions granted by him. They were echoes of the Hive Mind, still gnawing at the edges of me. Finally came the voice. Not words, not yet, but rhythm. in the pulse of my blood, in the hum of machines, in the drip of nutrient fluids. A cadence too deliberate to be chance. I began to tap it unconsciously against the arm of my chair. The servitors recorded it. The inquisitors transcribed it. And still they did not end me. One night, I think it was night, though time meant little, I awoke to silence. No servitors, no hum of engines, no drip of fluid, only stillness. I thought myself dead. Then the viewport flickered, and beyond it, void stared back. Stars glittered, cold and endless. And in the reflection of that void, I saw not my broken body, but something else. Compound eyes. I pressed my head back against the chair, breath ragged. The reflection shifted back into my own face. But I knew what I had seen, and I knew it had seen me. The inquisitors came more frequently after that. They spoke in hushed tones, their parchment filled with sketches of synaptic nodes, capillary towers, hive ships. They compared my descriptions to their own records, nodding, confirming. They thought me a resource. But I thought of Marsden, dragged beneath the earth. I thought of Thal's final scream, his soul dissolving into alien chorus. I thought of Jesson, bait for the Hive Mind study, and I realized there was no difference between this cell and that chamber, between these quills and those tendrils, between the Imperium and the Devourer. Both consumed, both catalogued, both left nothing untouched. I was no longer a soldier of the Emperor, no longer prey of the Tyranids. I was both. I was neither. That night, I whispered into the silence, "Are you still there?" No answer came, but I felt it, watching, patient, curious. The hunt had never ended. It never would. I no longer marked the passing of days. There are no dawns in this place, no nights, only the constant glow of lumen strips and the scratch of quills as inquisitorial scribes record my every breath. Time is measured instead by the rhythm of my dreams, the moments when I am no longer in my steel tomb, but wandering again in jungles that no longer exist. Valar Eing burns no more. It is ash drifting in void, stripped of life, rendered sterile by virus bombs and orbital fire. But in my sleep it thrives. Every vine pulses with alien ichor. Every insect buzz carries coded intent. The moon lives within me, as surely as the spores cling to my marrow. The inquisitors think they are studying me. They think they are peeling knowledge from my mind to use against the great devourer. They do not see that in cataloging my torment, they are cataloging for it. Every word I speak, every vision I recount, every memory of fear they force me to relive, it all becomes data. And what the Imperium learns, the Hive Mind learns in turn. For I am still connected. I fought against that truth once, told myself the dreams were echoes, scars left behind by the Tyranid presence. But the longer I endure, the more I know. It is not memory, it is conversation. The Hive Mind does not speak in words, nor in voices. It speaks in patterns, of sound, of rhythm, of instinct. It whispers in the drip of fluids, in the tap of my fingers against the arm of the chair, in the pulse of blood behind my eyes. It waits in silence, watching, patient. And sometimes, when the inquisitors leave me alone, I tap its cadence into the air. I feel it stir, respond, approve. And in those moments, I do not know if I am Orin Vale, Guardsman of the Armageddon 17th, or merely a mouthpiece for something far older, far hungrier. The inquisitors ask if I still hear it. I tell them yes. They ask if I resist. I tell them yes. They nod, satisfied, never knowing how meaningless those words are. For resistance and surrender are the same when the predator knows you down to the firing of your neurons. It does not matter what I say. It already knows the truth. At times, I imagine my regiment beside me. Thale, scarred and steady, standing at my right shoulder. Marsden, laughing even as the ground swallowed him. Jesson, clutching his broken arm but refusing to fall. I see them in the corner of my cell, in the reflection of steel, in the shimmer of nutrient fluid. They do not accuse me anymore. They do not ask why I lived when they died. They only watch, as the Hive Mind watches, patient, curious. One night, though here, every night is only what I name it. I dreamed of something different. Not the jungle, not the synaptic node, the void. I floated in blackness, stars cold and distant, and before me stretched a fleet. Not of steel, but of flesh. Tendrils reaching across light years, each ship a living beast, each shadow a hunger without end. I felt it turn toward me. Not with malice, not even with hunger, but with recognition, like a scholar noticing a familiar page in an endless tome. And then I understood. I am not hunted. I am studied. I am the puzzle it is solving. And when it has solved me, it will solve you. The chaplain's words return to me sometimes, echoing through memory. Your torment is your service. Perhaps he was right. My torment serves the Imperium. The Inquisition learns from me. Their quills scratch down patterns, their augurs map spores, their scribes whisper that perhaps the Emperor's light has guided them to a weapon in my suffering. But my torment serves the Hive Mind as well. It learns from me, learns how I think, how I fear, how I endure. It learns patience through me, it learns faith through me, it learns defiance through me. And faith, patience, defiance, they are no longer weapons. They are offerings. Sometimes, when the Inquisitors ask what I dream, I lie. Sometimes I tell them of jungle paths that never existed, or faces that were not there. Sometimes I tell them of victories against the swarm, of Tyranids routed by the faith of Guardsmen. And when I lie, I feel the Hive Mind lean closer, curious, interested, testing truth against falsehood, learning the difference. It rewards me with silence, and in that silence, I understand. My lies are as valuable to it as my truths. For to know the limits of deception is to know the limits of prey. Even in lies, I feed it. What is left of Orin Vale? Not a soldier. I will never again march with last gun in hand, never again hear the bark of Sergeant Thale driving us forward. Not a man. My body is broken, my blood tainted, my nights stolen. Not a martyr. The Emperor has denied me death, denied me the clean ending I begged for. What remains is witness. Witness to the truth of the Tyranids. They do not hate us. They do not fear us. They do not even see us as enemies. We are puzzles, resources, patterns to be solved. And they are very, very good at solving puzzles. The scribes ask me for final statements before each sedation cycle. They think they are building a record, a report to be sent to inquisitorial archives. Perhaps they are. But perhaps I am building something else. A message not for them, but for the Hive Mind still watching me, still waiting, still curious. I speak aloud to the empty chamber, my voice ragged but steady. I am Guardsman Orin Vale, last survivor of the Armageddon 17th. I know what it means to be hunted by the Tyranid, not to be chased, not to be slain, but to be known, to be catalogued, down to the marrow of your bones and the shadows of your thoughts, to be reduced to essence and rebuilt into hunger. The hunt never ends. It waits in the silence between heartbeats. It lurks in the static of the vox. It breathes in the spores we draw into our lungs. And it learns. Always, it learns. You who read this, know this truth. The Emperor's light may dim, your courage may falter, your weapons may break, but the Tyranids will endure. For they are patient, they are curious, they are inevitable, and they already know you. I close my eyes then, the servitors preparing their needles, the scribes scratching their quills. I feel the presence stir, not in the room, not in the void, but inside me, and I know it is listening.